leading up to the landfall of Hurricane Helene, schools around East Tennessee debated whether to close. The storm was traveling north and they knew inclement weather was on the way, most likely bringing heavy winds and flooding along with it. There was no reason to be open with the chance of dangerous travel or losing power. They thought they were prepared, but no one was prepared for the devastation we saw in our part of East Tennessee. The storm hit quickly, it hit hard, and it did more than just flood.
Well, in the first couple of days, I think it was still a rather chaotic situation, and we wanted to bring at least a little semblance of some order to the chaos by just tackling a few stories. We're a small paper, we tackled what we could a little bit at a time, but it was just an unprecedented event. And the way the damage was spread out from the flood, I mean, if you were to have visited downtown Irwin the next day, you would not have thought anything had happened. I mean, downtown Irwin open for business and normal as could be. And it only gradually became apparent to everyone the full scope of the tragedy that unfolded on September 27th.
There were people who were saying it was going to be catastrophic, but I don't think you really picture that. What it actually looks like, you can't picture that in your head.
Yeah, we received a phone call from the editor in Mountain City. It told us that the old tree up there, the old oak, I believe it was, that had toppled, and that was the first sign. And then we started hearing reports of flooding throughout the day from Carter County and from Washington County, not so much in Hawkins and Sullivan, but then we really started hearing things about Unicoi County. And then early afternoon, we found out that at the hospital in Unicoi County that there were 50 plus people stranded on top, and we knew we had something big going on.
We got up around 6 in the morning, and I started getting phone calls asking me if we were aware of how much flooding there is in town. So that was the first kind of wake-up call. And so we went back and forth, made some phone calls, some other folks too, but the mayor himself started driving around town, sending me photographs of pictures of the flooding and how the water started rising. And that was the initial start of, wait, this is a little bit more than just a little rain. And then, big news for this town is that our big award-winning 350-year-old tree just fell down. The news started coming in, pouring in. I was still at home. I couldn't even drive into town because now roads were closed. And this is all within the first few hours of the morning. That's when I realized, man, this is big. We couldn't even get into town. That's why we had folks who live in town, like the mayors and some other folks we know are the ones that started letting us know how bad it really is. When you hear that the electric company is underwater in the heart of town, you know this is not just a little rain or some small flood. And that's when we start realizing that we need to wake up, because this was much worse than anybody anticipated.
Biggest mistake I made in the whole thing was I decided I'm going to go up to Monroe Mountain because I know there'll be stuff going on up there, and the Doe River always floods up in that area, so I thought it would be a good place. And that was a mistake, because when I got up halfway there, trees started falling down all over, and we had 100-foot tall trees falling on a 5-lane highway, and turned around and started coming back towards Elizabethton. This is on Highway 19E, and just about missed a huge electrical line that was hanging right at windshield level across all 5 lanes of traffic. And for the next 2 or 3 hours, I was trapped there, spending my time watching trees fall down across the highway. And then I realized later they weren't just keeping traffic from going forward because of the down power line. It turned out that all of Hampton was flooded at the time, and there was no place to go, so they kept us up there. So I didn't get to see a lot of it.
We had every person across all 5 newsrooms working on this story by that point. Making phone calls, going out into the field. Reporters need to have legs. They were heading out, getting to the scene, coming back in. Every editor was working on it, gathering information, posting stories to the websites. Information was coming in faster than we could really process it. It was a long day. It was a long several days. But we knew as soon as we heard about what was going on at the hospital in Irwin that we needed to scramble and try to get images, try to get photos, pulling out all the stops. We finally got some photos from the Virginia State Police who helped with the rescue, plucking people from the rooftop at the hospital.
I was instructed to go to Irwin because the hospital was evacuating, Unicoi County Hospital. And so I drove over there, and as I was driving over there, I was on I-26, and there was water pouring onto the road. And that was kind of the first sign that I saw that, wow, this may be actually pretty bad. The wind was tremendous, and before I left, I was looking out the window across the street, and there was, I guess, metal on top of a building up top across the street. It was coming off of the building, and I could see it go flying by. So I thought the wind was going to be the biggest factor, but it was actually the water. The water was just pouring onto the road, and as I pulled up onto the ramp, I looked over and I saw just water flowing all across, in all directions, just water just knocking stuff over, going through buildings, going through walls of buildings. There were people across the way at the hospital, and they were about to be evacuated. They were just getting onto the roof, and they had kayakers, swift water rescue teams who were going towards the building, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was looking at because this was the second or third month I'd been there, and so I wasn't really familiar with Unicoi County in the area. And so when I saw the hospital, I didn't know I was looking at the hospital at the time.
I was able to report on Joseph Sneed, who works at the Unicoi County Hospital. I got to report on his point of view. He kind of went over the details of what people were feeling at the time, and there were plenty of people on the hospital roof that needed oxygen tanks while they were waiting to be rescued, and Sneed had to go back in with some officials to get extra tanks for them. Overall, just that process of them getting off the hospital roof, I think, was an incredible effort done by emergency services, and it was really special to hear that kind of heartwarming story in a time of disaster.
Up in the hollers, here in Mountain City in Johnson County, literally mountain roads were just gone. Pavements, asphalt gone. Up in the mountains where people were getting stuck. Now those calls will start coming in while they still had power, but that was gone too. And so once all those started building up, and on top of it you got main routes like State Route 91 going north of town, a dozen places the road just washed away. Major route to Boone, from Mountain City to Boone south of town, thousands of people take that road to work. A dozen spots were washed away, and these are, we're talking major flooding. When the day was over, we knew this is going to be bad.
On Monday, I called an employee from the Unicoi Animal Shelter and talked to her about her experience saving all the animals, and I think that was when it really hit me hard about the reality of what people went through, where for a while she was alone, and then another employee and some community members came to help her, but she experienced the power being out, so she was working in pitch darkness. There's over 100 animals, and she and other people were risking their lives. The water was up to their chest. They were trying to carry these large squirming dogs out against the current inside the building. And I think that's when I just realized the whole reality of the situation, where, you hear about the flooding, but you don't always hear about people's firsthand experience of when the moment that they thought they were going to die, but they were still going to keep going to help other people or to help the animals. And thankfully, this story turned out with a happy ending, where they saved all the animals found foster homes. So that was very fortunate. But I think hearing someone recount the experience of knowing that they weren't going to leave, they were going to save all the animals no matter who showed up, and just hearing the minute that she thought she was going to die doing it just made it so real and was really impactful.
There have been so many stories. One in particular is Grace Teeter's story that she did about the aftermath. She went out to cover South Washington County. We had gotten a tip that there was some people helping out, and she kind of tagged along with them. And whenever she got over there, she was able to just get into the community and listen to the community members. And, you know, I gave her a couple of days to work on the story. And she wrote the story, and it was heartbreaking. And I can tell you right now, it's the first time in my life that I've ever read a story and just tears came to my eyes. And I was just sitting there and I was reading it, and, you know, I'm sitting there trying to edit it, and I'm like editing with just bawling at the same time.
I wasn't really prepared for kind of the effects it would have on the community, and I kind of spent the first day I was here, I think that Friday, going around Johnson City, taking pictures of different, you know, storm damage and flooding at that time, which to me just meant, you know, Milligan's Creek is going to be overflowing or there might be some tree branches, but I didn't realize really how bad things had gotten until I went to Embryville the next week, and that was really kind of an experience I'll never forget. It's right near the Nolichucky River, so as we all know at this point that really rose and kind of overflowed in record time. And I worked with a church down there, and I met a lot of the community members, and they were all kind of in recovery zone. So from where I was working in Johnson City, you know, I thought this was just a lot of rain, a lot of wind. But when I got to Embryville, it was, oh my gosh, this is devastating for people. And it's, you know, I think now we know it's the deadliest hurricane since Hurricane Katrina. So this was something that no one was really prepared for and no one expected. In Embryville, I, you know, sorted through clothes with a 10-year-old girl who was able to kind of pinpoint amongst, you know, the piles, well, I donated this and I donated that, and she was so eager to help. And then another resident took me in a little Polaris to different areas that you couldn't reach with a vehicle, and people were welcoming me into their homes or what was left of their homes, and they were, you know, cracking jokes, clearly devastated, but just doing what they could to get by and make light of the situation, if you will. Samantha Honeycutt, she grew up in the Embryville area near Bumpus Cove, and she was in the church, and she was just, you know, in control. It was her command center. She was telling everyone what to do. She was, you know, showing volunteers how to distribute. I'll never forget, she like held out their palm and she put a bag of, you know, donated goods in her palm, and she said, don't ask them if they need it, just give it to them, because she had known by that point that a lot of people were either too prideful or they felt like someone else needed the help more. So she said, don't ask, just give. And that image will always stay in my mind, that she was able to kind of realize that and make that kind of correction moving forward. Ken Davis, he came to visit his brother whose house was inhabitable after the flooding, and he came all the way from Washington, D.C., and, you know, they were just cracking jokes with each other as brothers do, back and forth, and it struck me that they were able to find positive moments amid everything that was going on. There was a beautiful bird that perched itself, you know, in the debris in the river, and he interrupted his interview and said, oh, look at this, like, you should take a picture of that, it's really pretty. Like, you know, 2 seconds away, his house is, you know, filled with mud and everything is destroyed, but he was able to find that moment of pause and appreciate beauty among destruction.
Several weeks after the flooding took place, we touched base with the families of one of the flood victims, and her name was Bertha Mendoza, and her family is very plugged into Irwin. One of her sons is newly elected to the Board of Education for Unicoi County, and another son played football for East Tennessee State University in Johnson City for a while.
There was another story I did on Gabriel Mendoza. His mother passed away. She worked in the industrial park, and I was able to kind of commemorate her memory for them in a tasteful way and kind of get to know her better and her role in the community and get to know how much her family and her friends cherished her.
It accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. We wanted to tell her story and not just have her be one of the flood statistics. So I would say that was definitely one of the stories that we're most proud of.
The area around the Nolichucky was decimated, losing homes, lives, and businesses. The hospital rescue was a signature moment, as was the loss of the highway and the bridges connecting communities along the river. USA Raft and Blue Ridge Paddling, two popular destinations for locals and tourists, were gone in an afternoon. An entire industrial park washed away. And then there was the tragedy of Impact Plastics. 6 of their employees died in the flood. The incident is still under investigation and scrutiny, and the backlash prompted the owner to record a video to, as he said, reduce stress on local law enforcement and combat death threats against him and his family.
I went to Governor Lee's, I think his first press conference in Eastern Tennessee after Helene had hit, and he was standing on I-26 on that bridge that collapsed. You could see the rubble of, the factories and everything, and being able to see that firsthand. Also drove through Irwin when I saw about 100 people standing outside. I think it was City Hall in Irwin. They were trying to expedite unemployment applications and benefit applications. A lot of those people who didn't have a lot to start out with in the beginning were now frantically, what am I going to do? How am I going to sustain myself and my families?
FEMA has helped with a lot of information, and we've been getting a lot of that kind of information going out to the readers, and already we've seen where FEMA has changed policies just because of this flood. I think they're more used to flatland floods in Florida and Louisiana. This is causing them to change their policies while they're in midstream, and so it's keeping us current with these changes that FEMA has never had to really deal with in this in-depth nature.
Uncle Johnny's Nolichucky Hostel in Irwin. People who hike the Appalachian Trail, they often stay there whenever they pass by it. And that was one story that stuck with me because just the amount of damage and debris that was there after the flood, it was just mind-boggling. The pictures he showed me of how much debris there was just laying around, and even after I went there, maybe a month later or so, it was just the amount of work that he and volunteers had put in to get that back up and, well, not running, but to clear the debris. It had to be an insane task. There was just so much of it that he was talking about how it was up to his waist in all directions. And the fact that they were able to clear all that out and with volunteer help, it's inspiring actually, because just the amount of work that would have to be put into that is crazy.
Our reporters were involved in the community more than ever during their storm coverage, and there seems to be a renewed dedication to serve the people in place they call home. It's the responsibility of the media to hold government and oversight accountable, and as we move ahead, our coverage and mission will be to do so with the utmost regard for our community. It doesn't take a hurricane or flood to remind you why you do this job, but it certainly puts it in perspective. The rebuilding effort will take years, and we all want it to happen quickly, but it's still our job to see that it gets done properly and legally.
I look forward to continue to telling people stories about, what it means to them for recovery. People may forget that Helene happened, months and months down the line, but I think that as long as we will continue to tell people stories, I think that's what matters most to the community. Also making, the federal government and the state government as accountable as they can to helping these people get back on their feet and rebuilding their lives.
Well, from the get-go, we were in the heart of everything. Of course, as so many other news media organizations, but in a small town like this, we are the only media. We're the only press. So a lot of folks rely on us for information. We went from church to church. We went to, of course, the main recovery centers and things like that. So we promoted as much as possible. We took a lot of photographs just to let people know what's going on. We made sure that everybody was aware of where they can pick up items. And of course, there were some other situations where people were confused or they didn't know how to get certain items and they were confused as to where to get help. And we were glad to be a part of that. One of the things that bothered us is how many folks were turned down, not receiving help that they thought they would. One of the biggest issues that we needed to help promote is that just because they were turned down by FEMA or denied their request, that was not the end of it. They needed to go back. And folks around here just lost faith, lost hope. They saw that all they saw was denied and just tried to do everything on their own, which did not surprise me. People here, they don't need anybody. Everybody has a truck, everybody has all the tools that they need to cut trees and clean things up. So that's something is still on us to continue to encourage, don't give up. And the other thing we're trying to do now is we're focusing on letting folks know that the community is still there for them.
Well, from day one, we've posted all of our stories for free in front of our website. And going forward, you will not need a subscription. We're doing that as a public service for public safety, keeping everybody informed what's going on. When the storm affected Irwin, that people were cut off and there was no electricity, they had no internet service, no cell service. The print product was how people got information. We're covering a number of different angles from the health of the Nolichucky River. Stories such as divers who went in the first days are now developing river rash. So that's a threat that we need to continue to look at. The EPA has a full-time specialist in Irwin monitoring everything from the sewage plant to the river. We need to keep on top of that. There's the investigation of the people who died at the industrial park in Irwin, so we need to stay on top of that. We don't know what the long-term environmental effects will be, so this story will continue to unravel and unspool for the next months and years.
Citizens throughout the region have stepped forward in an effort to protect the Nolichucky River as CSX Transportation seeks to rebuild damaged rail lines and bridges. The rail company has mined rocks from the river itself, and critics claim that action is causing immense damage to the riverbed and its vast and unique ecosystem.
CSX operates the Blue Ridge subdivision, which is out there in Irwin. It's a line of railroad track that goes through Unicoi and then into North Carolina. It's mainly used for freight and things like that.
that bridge was severely damaged from the flooding. And so CSX has been working, to get those repairs speedily done. And in the efforts of doing that, they've had to do some work in the river and digging up the riverbed, and that has caused a lot of concern for environmental groups and the impact on ecotourism in the area. And just, the general tourism for that area. So there's been a lawsuit filed by the Southern Environmental Law Group, and the lawsuit was filed in North Carolina, in Asheville. And so it's been ongoing litigation involving some federal groups, and just, what they've done and kind of under the radar, so it's ongoing.
Well, moving forward, we're going to have to play the role of watchdog. There's going to be millions of dollars pumped into this community. And it's going to have to be our role to make sure that that money is used effectively and used for what it's supposed to be used for.
As journalists, we're supposed to serve as watchdogs for the community, so it's even more so important to be doing that now, especially with these government entities involved and other corporations involved. So I think just continuing to push for that accountability and responsibility for these entities is very important during this time.
Yeah, my role is to really be supportive of the editors and reporters and provide guidance where I can. I have a little more experience in some of these areas of open government and trying to point them in directions. We know that there are a number of investigations going on from the local level, state level, and federal level, and we need to make sure that we're kicking in the right doors to get access to that information that will be beneficial to everybody in this region. It's what we do is we see this as a noble calling, and just holding those in positions of power accountable. And this is what we do. We come to work this. We live and breathe this. Local journalism is the heartbeat of this company.
Well, you never imagined something like this happening in your community, especially this far inland. But life has a way of delivering the unexpected, and this storm was no exception. The moment we realized the magnitude of what was unfolding, our teams across Six Rivers Media joined together and became unified for the single purpose is to provide timely, accurate, and compassionate reporting to our communities. It just wasn't about covering the story. It was about being there for the people we serve all year long during one of the most challenging times they've ever faced. As the days passed, the scope of the devastation became clear. Entire neighborhoods were washed away, and tragic loss of life left us all shocked. Shock gave way to resolve as our reporters and editors worked tirelessly, often under difficult and emotional circumstances, to capture the full impact of this disaster on the lives of so many in our communities. I'm incredibly proud of the dedication and teamwork our staff displayed through this crisis. Initially, our focus was reporting what was happening in real time, tracking the storm's path, the damage it caused, and the immediate effects on our communities. However, as the situation evolved, so did our mission. We quickly shifted to covering stories to rescue and recovery efforts, highlighting the resilience and courage of those impacted. From there, our focus turned towards solutions, informing our readers about ways to help, whether by donating resources, volunteering, or supporting local relief efforts. It was heartening to see so many people step up to lend a hand, showing that even in the face of immense loss, the spirit of community remained strong. Through it all, this experience reminded us of the vital role journalism plays during times of crisis. Not just to inform, but to connect, support, and inspire.
concealed until the walls come down, releasing every moment in between. A memory of these faces, fading as the years go by, reflected